Never get it wrong. The whole reason that Theo Epstein was brought in by the Ricketts family was so that the Cubs could undergo a rebuild. Not the rebuild that you're thinking it's for, that they wanted to sit there and build a champion. That was something that would happen by pure happenstance. The whole point was to save the $300 million on payroll that you could invest into the Wrigley Field renovations. And that's what happened. That was ultimately the end game for the Ricketts family when it came to the hiring of Theo Epstein. This was a chance to slash a ton of payroll, pay for those Wrigley Field renovations, and in the process be able to say, hey, for the time being, it's going to be ugly, but we've got this legit guy who has built a champion before, and we believe in him that he could build one again. And that's not saying that the Ricketts family didn't care about winning. That doesn't mean that they didn't care about potentially getting World Series, because they could have underwent that rebuild with any other number of guys. It was just much easier to do it on all levels with Theo Epstein. And here's what I could say. One of the few things I wanted to see left in life was a World Series championship for my Chicago Cubs. And I got it. So if the Cubs never win another World Series in my lifetime, I can at least say I'll always have 2016. I'll always have that season. And always have that championship. Now, I will be eternally grateful to Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer, Joe Madden, the Cubs players, for delivering that. But when you look at the way the Cubs were constructed, they were designed not to win one World Series, but multiple ones. With the young power hitters they had on their team, with years of team control, it allowed the flexibility of payroll to be able to go out and sign guys like a John Lester in free agency. It allowed you the flexibility to go out and make trades for guys like Jose Quintana and so on and so forth. But when you look at this now, you've got NLCS trip in 2015, World Series championship in 2016, NLCS trip in 2017, wild card game loss in 2018. The Cubs are trending in the wrong direction. That's not to say the Cubs are a bad team. Most certainly, you don't make the playoffs 4 straight years being a bad team. That doesn't mean that this thing needs to be totally imploded, because again, they've made it 4 straight years and they've still got a young core that rivals most teams in Major League Baseball. But I think most logical, sensible Cubs fans can acknowledge and understand, and certainly the organization can understand, that there need to be some changes made. There needs to be a massive, significant retooling and reshaping and reconfiguring of the roster and the way things are configured. There has to be, because the Cubs are trending in the wrong direction. And you don't want this to get to the point where you've had a couple more years of promise and potential that ultimately goes unfulfilled and unrealized, and then you're looking at potentially having to pay this young core all that money that they're going to command in a few years for the same diminishing results. You want to win multiple World Series. You don't want to be the Atlanta Braves of the 90s and the 2000s. That's what the Cubs are staring down the barrel of. And there are major changes that need to be made, especially when you look at it from a lineup standpoint. They had 40 games this past season where they scored 0 or 1 runs. That's a quarter of their games they scored 1 run or less. That is terrible and that is pathetic. The fact that this team could even be in a playoff position is damn near miraculous. It means there's way too much swing and miss in their lineup. There's way too much hot and cold, and way too many times where they are unable to piece together rallies. The numbers back that up. And the one team in the league that had more games of 0 and 1 runs were the Baltimore Orioles, who lost over 110 games this past season. They were historically bad, and the Cubs' offense almost matched them in terms of 0 or 1 runs scored in a game. So obviously, something's got to happen with the lineup. Significant. There has to be retooling, rethinking, reconfiguring, because the way it's structured is not working. Hitting a guy like Chris Bryant second, or whoever the hell else the Cubs usually put in that position, is stupid. And while granted Joe Madden is being brought back in 2019, and there'll be a part of me that'd be happy to see him go, but understanding the reality of it's a little bit knee-jerk and reflex reactionary to send them packing, understanding that all the shuffling of the lineup didn't work. Hitting guys like Brian or Rizzo second is stupid because you're taking away RBI opportunities. You need guys to set the table. You need guys to get on base to create rallies, and the Cubs don't have that, so they don't do that. You have to go out there and build your team better offensively, which is going to lead to a lot of Cubs fans hoping and praying and wishing for Bryce Harper. And while, yes, the Cubs need to go out there and spend some money in free agency or via trade and bring in new bats and new players in that lineup, they must say no to Bryce Harper. I understand this is a new shiny thing, and the Cubs being able to go out there and get a big-time star like Bryce Harper in the peak of his career in his mid-20s is a statement and all of this and skip-de-skip and whoop-de-woo and all that crap. But let's pump the brakes on the naiveness here for just a second and rationally think about this. Would you want to pay Bryce Harper north of $30 million per year for 8 to 10 years for a guy who has just one 40 home run season and one 30 home run season in his 7-year career? That's 2 seasons total of 30-plus home runs. And you're talking about you want to pay him $30-plus million a damn year? He doesn't even average 30 home runs a season. You're paying him more than $1 million per home run, basically. A guy with just one 100 RBI season, a guy this past year who just struck out 169 times. So for a team that has all the swing and miss in their lineup that they have, you want to add another guy with a whole hell of a lot of swing and miss in his game? A guy who's hit sub 250 2 of the past 3 seasons? Again, more of what you already have. If you get away from the commercials and the endorsements and all this other shit offensively, what is truly that much different right now, current state, from Bryce Harper and Kyle fucking Schwarber? And there are a lot of Cubs fans that are ready to move on from Kyle Schwarber, and that's fine. So am I. Why the hell then would you want to sit there and plunk $30+ million into Bryce Harper for almost a damn decade to be an only slightly upgraded version of Kyle freaking Schwarber? That makes no sense. A guy that's bad defensively at times and can frankly be a liability there, and a career .211 hitter in the postseason. So he brings you no clutch factor. He doesn't improve your team defensively. He's got tons of swing and miss in his game. 2 of the past 3 seasons, he's hit south of 250, including this year, which was a freaking contract year. 2 seasons out of 7 with 30-plus home runs. But he's a big-time power threat in the lineup. Bullshit! 100 RBI season. And never mind all of that. Just keeping in mind that in order to pay Bryce Harper what he's going to command and probably ultimately get, and what it's going to require to get him, that you've got Jose Quintana and Kyle Hendricks who could be free agents after the 2020 season. That's only 2 years down the road. And after 2021, holy Christ, you've got Javier Baez, Chris Bryant, and Anthony Rizzo are all free agents at the same freaking time. So all of those guys who you'd think you would want to keep most, if not all of, understanding even in that situation, without a Bryce Harper, it's incredibly challenging to keep all of them from a financial standpoint. Bringing in Bryce Harper means you probably got to let 2, if not 3 of them go long term. The Cubs won't be able to pay everybody, especially with the contract that Bryce Harper has on the books, knowing still that you've got Jason Hayward and the length of that contract, that fucking monstrosity. You got to figure out how to get rid of that. And then when you even get past that and what Bryce Harper could impact in terms of who you can pay and who you can't afford to pay or won't be able or willing to pay, you better not damn be paying $30+ million to a 1 or 2 hitter. That's stupid. And you look at fucking Bryce Harper. He looks like the type of guy that Joe Madden would look like and be like, hurt. I'm going to hit Bryce Harper 2 and Chris Bryant 3 and Rizzo 4 and Baez 5. And you're going to have a whole bunch of swing and miss in the middle of your freaking lineup. The truth is Bryce Harper is too similar and not necessarily much better, if better at all, than Chris Bryant, Javier Baez, or Anthony Rizzo. What are you thinking of bringing him in for? Because he's a big name? Because he gets all this marketing behind him? Because him and Chris Bryant are Vegas buddies? Who gives a shit? The answer is not to sit there and bring in more of the same. The answer is not to sit there and spend massively in free agency on one guy where you really have to question just how much impact you're really truly going to get out of him. And then to top it all off, when you think about the concept of paying somebody like Bryce Harper massive money, Theo Epstein, Jed Hoyer, their history in free agency is mixed. John Lester was a great contract. But frankly, if we're really being honest from a Cubs fan standpoint, at that time, it's a contract most of us would have given out. Sure, we could fret about the number of years and the amount of money, but ultimately, signing him before 2015, you knew the team needed an ace. You knew the team needed a true number one. You knew you needed somebody that can help kind of change the culture, and Lester has been every bit of that and so much more. A truly great free agent signing by them. But how many of us wouldn't have given him that contract? The Zobrist contract was solid. Zobrist paid off for the Cubs, especially in that World Series in 2016. Worth every penny, in my opinion. But this past offseason, this is a guy that gave Tyler Chatwood a lot of money for several years, and he sucks. He decided to let Jake Arrieta go to sign Yu Darvish, who was hurt most of the year, and when he wasn't hurt, he absolutely sucked. So you're going to trust Theo and Jed's judgment in this case when they clearly made the wrong decision, at least so far, choosing Yu Darvish over Jake Arrieta. They gave a bunch of money to Chatwood to suck. And oh, never mind the fact, even if you go back to the ridiculousness of the Fujikawa deal from a few years back, Jason fucking Hayward! The last time they went out there and signed an outfielder to a big contract, it was Jason Hayward! Now, sure, Bryce Harper is a better player than Jason Hayward. I agree. But where can you find the appetite after locking yourself into Jason Hayward for $20+ million a year for up to 8 freaking seasons to give Bryce Harper potentially over $30 million a year for 8 to 10 damn seasons? No, this team needs to find guys at the top of the order that make contact, that get on base, that can hit, not just swing for the fences. And Bryce Harper is closer to Adam Dunn than a lot of you want to realize. He's getting more and more like the guy that one of three things happens when he gets to the plate. It's a home run, it's a strikeout, it's a walk. He's evolving more and more into that. Is that what you want to plunk your money into long term? And you might think I'm crazy, but if you really think about it and you look at the numbers, I'm not that crazy. The craziness is thinking that Bryce Harper is the be-all, end-all cure for the Chicago Cubs. The craziness is thinking that the Chicago Cubs should go for Bryce Harper. You could take that money you potentially have to invest in Bryce Harper, find 2 guys in your lineup for the top of the order, and potentially a bullpen arm, and I'd much rather have that. No one guy is going to fix what ails the Chicago Cubs lineup. And most certainly, it's not going to be Bryce Harper. You'd be better off giving that money to Machado than you would Bryce Harper. If the Cubs give Harper the amount of money it's going to require to get him, then they deserve all that comes with it. And unfortunately, I don't know that it'll be any more World Series championships.